Hello friends. Today we're going to get into that age-old discussion of should you quit your day job when you are a writer, artist, creative type, content creator, and you're starting to make some pretty good money. Obviously, don't quit your day job when you're not making any money. I think we can all agree that's not very smart. But there does get to be kind of a fuzzy point in the middle. Usually common wisdom in general says, no, you should not quit your day job. These types of careers are not very stable. They can fluctuate wildly, and you're going to want to keep that stability. But our hearts, our aspirations, they might tell us the exact opposite. I want to quit my day job as soon as possible. So who do you listen to? The practical side of your nature or the dreamer? And I've also noticed that people who still have their day jobs on YouTube, particularly because this is where we have these kind of long conversations, often feel the need to kind of defend or justify why they still have a day job, which implies that the default positive position is to quit your day job. This is the dream. But does the dream live up to what we imagine it to be? Of course, there is a reason why quitting your day job would be the dream, aside from the actual fact of quitting your day job, because it implies that you're doing well enough at the thing you wanted to do, your creative dream, to even consider quitting your day job. So just kind of by default, there is kind of a dream realized aspect to quitting the day job. And sure, it feels great to go up to your boss and tell them, I'm doing so well with my books, my YouTube channel, my art business, whatever, that I'm out of here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of the day job and why you might want to consider quitting yours or where you might want to cling to it. My name is Lydia Foxglove and I am a fantasy author. I have been a full-time fantasy author for the most part since 2009, and now I'm also a YouTuber, which is contributing to my income. So for the most part, I've made my living in creative endeavors, and the only jobs I've had since 2009 that were not writing books or YouTube were working at a tiny small town used bookstore and selling stuff I bought at auction houses on eBay. So both of those still fall into the category of this is not exactly a 9-to-5 job. These are kind of your chill, working for yourself jobs. At least in theory. Are they really so chill? We'll talk about that too. And the fact is, I've spent my entire adult life structuring my life around avoiding having to work a 9-to-5 job for somebody else. The main reason being that ever since I was a kid, I get deep into my story worlds. I'll have waves where I'm so hyper-focused on my story that it is actually kind of difficult for me to function as a real human being in the real world. So the last real job that I had, I was working at a health food store. I worked about 28 to 30 hours a week, and they were long shifts, like a 10-hour shift, 3 days a week. And then I had 4 days off. So that was a pretty generous schedule. And sometimes I would call in because I was writing, and my boss was always like, sure, if you want to come in a little late, as long as you get here before the morning shift leaves, that's fine by me. I didn't do it very often because it's kind of a silly reason to call into your job that you only work 3 days a week at anyway, but it would hurt. It would hurt to go into work. If you felt this way before, you know exactly what I mean. And if you've never felt this way, you probably think that's weird. Just go to work like a normal adult, but it is intense. So I've sometimes described my writing career as a mental illness I figured out how to monetize, which I think is fairly accurate probably. And this channel is kind of geared toward people like me where you are willing to give up almost anything as long as you have time to create. That's the kind of person that I am. So the only jobs I had working outside the house were in retail from ages 18 to 26. And at both of those jobs, I worked about 30 hours a week. We lived on barely anything. And when I sold my first book, I quit my job at the health food store. So I've never had a 40-hour-a-week job working for someone else. And I think it would be very hard for me. There are weeks where I'm totally fine. I actually like going to work. I like getting out of the house. I like having coworkers, and sometimes I like kind of drudge work. Like when my brain is kind of like it cycles on and off. And there's times when my brain is in rest mode and I would rather I was the inventory specialist at the health food store. And that was a great job for me because it was just somewhat meditative, scanning and counting and things like that. And I kind of was the inventory specialist at the used bookstore as well. I'm very good with inventory because I'm very detail oriented and I enjoy the boring categorization aspect of inventory. But I want to be able to decide when I go to work. If I had a little bit more of a normal person brain, maybe, is there such a thing as a normal person brain? I just know that I'm not it. I sometimes truly envy people who work just a job. Just go to work, you work your day, then you come home and you just chill with the video game and you don't feel a huge obligation to create something and you just get to enjoy yourself when you get home. Even if that time is more limited, you, the person who works 40 hours a week, but you get your weekend. But the problem with those kind of schedules is that it can truly be hard to create something because going to work makes you tired. And then on the weekend, you often have to fit in other errands or cleaning your house, having your social life. There's a lot to fit in on just 2 days a week. So scrambling to find the time to create something can be very difficult. And that's why I would rather give up almost anything in life than my free time. But most people put a little more value on things like vacations or owning a nicer car or nicer home, being able to buy stuff, being able to eat out now and then at like nicer places as opposed to just take out tacos. And for those people, I think they would go absolutely crazy with my lifestyle because you really have to have a very burning desire to create that trumps your desire to like participate in society in a lot of ways. And I don't think that's very common judging by the people around me in life. But you know, whether you are running a creative business full-time or you're trying to squeeze it in around a day job, chances are, like me, you're always battling exhaustion. And I don't do well with the caffeine levels in coffee. I'm more of a tea girl. But for a while now, Magic Mind has been getting me past that afternoon slump. So I was thrilled when they reached out to me about their 2 new shots. Y'all know they've been one of my favorite sponsors. I eat well and I get plenty of sleep, but sometimes it's still just not enough. Some of you said you've had good results with them too, but you asked if they have any caffeine in them, and yes, there is 55 milligrams of caffeine, similar to a cup of tea, along with vitamins, adaptogens, and nootropics for calm energy. But now they have the free with all the same other good stuff, but totally free of caffeine and sugar. I've been loving this one when I feel tired, but also anxious, and I don't want to risk any caffeine. And along with the free, they also sent me the Max, which has 165 milligrams of caffeine, but it's time-released. I never even heard of time-released caffeine. Unlike regular caffeine, which hits all at once, caffeine in Magic Mind is released gradually over 3 to 4 hours. Thanks to L-theanine and nano encapsulation, you get a smooth, sustained boost of energy instead of a sudden spike and crash. Dave and I tried them all, and this one was his favorite because he can handle the caffeine. And if you're not sure which one is for you, they also have a quiz you can take. The regular Magic Mind, still my fave. The amount of caffeine is just right for me most days, and I love the calm, focused energy boost. But I'm keeping some free on hand for my more jittery days, and Dave's sticking with the Max. As they're launching, they have a limited offer. The QR code or link in my description gets you 60% off a subscription. They also have a money-back guarantee, and you can cancel anytime, so it's a great time to try it. See if it works for you. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of this. I'm going to argue to you why you should keep your day job, even if you're making a living as a creative right now. First, well, it's kind of the default position. You already have a good job. You really don't want to relinquish that kind of stability too quickly. I can't tell you how many creative people that I've known who blew up with a book. They start making a ton of money. If you have a series that blows up on Amazon, you could be raking in like a whole year's salary on Amazon, like every month, as long as that series is like hot, and it can come almost out of nowhere. Is it common? No. But if it happens to you, you're probably going to be thinking, maybe I should quit this job. And I've seen people do this, and a lot of them end up going back to the job because this is an incredibly unstable business. One series blowing up, you should only quit your day job if your day job sucks. I was working in retail when I quit my job. it's pretty easy to replace a retail job that barely pays anything with another retail job that barely pays anything. So if your job is like kind of a crappy replaceable job, then sure, go ahead and quit. But if you have like a career, like you went to college for this, you had all these applications, you know, this is a real job, like a job you were happy to land, the kind of job that you would actually tell your family about, like, hey, I finally got the job, which working at a health food store is not the kind of job where you go like, oh my gosh, you got the job. Well, if you have a career, you do not want to quit it just because you suddenly have a book series that's raking in $50,000 a month. That seems amazing when it's happening to you, and it keeps happening. That has never happened to me, by the way, but I do know people that it has. My peak month was like $20,000, which is still a lot. But I was at $20,000, and a few years later, I was back down to $3,000. Despite working just as hard and writing books that I thought were just as marketable as when I had the $20,000 month, I just didn't guess correctly for several series in a row what people were looking for, and my income just started to totally crap out. This happens all the time. You have a hit series, maybe you have 2 hit series, and things change. I also know a lot of artists can be very similarly unstable. It's the kind of job where, you know, you have constant threats from AI, businesses shifting, social media shifts, changes in like Etsy or other platforms. Pandemics can hit people that sell artwork at conventions. Like, we've just had so much fluctuation for all kinds of creative types. And no matter how well you think you're doing, it could all collapse. So having a job, even my little job at the bookstore, I miss that job all the time. If you're new here, my bookstore washed away in Hurricane Helene, so I don't have that job anymore for reasons entirely beyond me and the owner's control. But having that steady income that had nothing to do with YouTube algorithms, social media reach, all that, it was great. It helped me sleep at night. Now I'm always really having to scramble and weigh every decision a little heavier. There's all kinds of consequences as far as like trying to decide how much I can really write the books I want to write. There's all kinds of consequences that happen because I lost the bookstore job. Oh, I gotta put this up again for that wind, don't I? You're also very much at the mercy of huge, indifferent companies if you're an artist, at least chances are. My income is largely dependent on, first, Google via YouTube, as well as Google Books, which I sell books through Google as well. Amazon, which is my biggest platform for selling books. There's Meta, which you might use for your social media presence, your groups, all kinds of things. Facebook ads go through Meta. And the thing about if something goes wrong with Google, good luck trying to get a real person to talk to you. Or Amazon, you know, if something happens, you will be talking to a customer service rep who has been offshored. Half the time they are not even sure like what your problem is, or they'll give you vague answers. It can take a lot of rigmarole to get a problem fixed. So if something bad happens to you, it can be devastating. It can be very difficult to get someone on the phone or on email that actually cares and understands that your whole business is collapsing because of some problem with your account. So you have to be very careful in the sense that you are at the mercy of these large companies. And not just their customer service, but of course also their algorithms, which none of us fully understand, and sometimes they change. Or sometimes there's a new rule that cracks down on a certain kind of thing, and you may or may not actually even be engaging in the thing they're cracking down on, but they might do some big sweeping thing to try to prevent X from happening. And it ends up culling a bunch of accounts that aren't even doing that thing because of some like AI decided, you know, there's all kinds of things that can happen. So you must be aware that you could get caught up in a disaster any moment. The good thing, at least about our present day, I will say, is that when I first started, you were really reliant on Amazon. And that has gotten a little more scattered. Like, a lot of people are now making a ton of money selling their books in the TikTok shop. Some people are having better luck with like direct sales via Facebook ads. So diversifying does help, but still a scary thing. Then you have the basic like self-employment problems. You're paying self-employment tax, at least in America. I have no idea how it works in other countries, but Here in America, if you're self-employed, there's a portion of tax that if you work for somebody, they pay it. And if you're working for yourself, you pay it. Of course, you can also form like a corporation, but if you're new, you're not a corporation. Or if you're kind of in a lower income bracket, and it doesn't make sense for everyone to incorporate their business if your income is just kind of like making a living for one person. Needless to say, you don't have health insurance. You have to pay for that out of pocket, and you don't get any paid vacations. You have to decide when you're allowed to have a paid vacation. And for a lot of self-employed people, you are your worst boss possible, and you almost never give yourself a vacation. I know one of my problems is I don't really love to travel that much, and I will, like, if I'm actually taking a trip, I will totally take a vacation, but I barely ever do. So if I'm not actually traveling, I never give myself a vacation. I've gotten a little better about that in the last couple years, but for years I just did not give myself, like, there were no weekends, there were no vacations, there was nothing. One of the big reasons people quit their jobs when they have something kind of blow up is because they think, well, I really need to capitalize on this opportunity. I could get so much more done if I wasn't at my day job. That is somewhat true. I'm not going to argue that you're not going to get more done at home if you quit a 40-hour or more a week job. But I have found that if you're only working like 25 to 30 hours a week, honestly, I do not get anything more done. I can easily fit a 25 to 30 hour a week job in and not get anything more done than if I have all the time in the world. And I have seen this echoed with so many self-employed people who finally quit the job. They think they're going to do all these things. And once they're faced with, I'm just home, there's nothing stopping me, I could get all this work done. Guess what? You don't. You don't get more done. It's an almost universal experience, especially at first, because you have to kind of find a new rhythm, and that can take a while. When you do find a rhythm, you might go a little too hard on it, like I did with not giving myself any vacation time, but generally, I don't get a whole lot more done being home all the time versus going to a job a few days a week. There's only so much creative work you can really do. I mean, I guess if your job is like writing or editing or something, that might not be true. But for most people, if your job's something totally different, it's not going to affect your ability to get writing done or art done as much as you think it might. So even if you have something really blowing up right now and you think, oh, I gotta quit my job because if I could just seize this opportunity and have all this time to do more of the things, then that's just going to keep rolling, but I need the time. Chances are that's probably not true. Another reason to keep your job is if you like your coworkers at all, you might get lonely without having them. I really am happier having a part-time job. And the main reason is because if I don't have a part-time job, I get almost no social interaction. I really like what I do at home, and it's very easy for me to just bury myself in it. And I'm not always that good at being social on the internet either. So if I don't go out and interact with real people on like a schedule where I have to do it, I just don't see people, especially because I'm much better with coworkers than I am with actual friends. Like, I'm a Capricorn, so I just want to talk about work. And of course, the last reason is that you probably started doing your art because you loved it. Now you're starting to make money on it. Yay! And you're loving that. You're making money on the thing you love, but as soon as you are entirely beholden to doing the thing you love for money, some of the joy drains out of it. It just does, because you will then have to make your decisions based on maintaining your income. It becomes a business instead of the thing that you loved, and that will affect things, and it will drain some of the love out of it, and it's pretty hard to avoid that. So think carefully whether you really want to rely entirely on something that you love as your job. Having said all that, let's argue the other way. Maybe you should absolutely quit your job. Take this opportunity. You're doing well enough right now to quit your job. How many chances in life are you going to get like this? Maybe you just need to go for it. First, like I said, not all jobs are created equal. So you have to kind of decide, is your job that you already have really worth clinging to? There are other jobs in the world. If your creative endeavor fails, you could always get another job. You also might learn some new skills that will make you more hireable in the process of like really trying to work on your creative job. Like just in the last couple of years since I started doing YouTube, and I started the YouTube mainly just to sell my books and also provide like a secondary income that would make me less reliant on writing books that I don't love. But in the process of doing all of this, I've gotten to understand YouTube as a platform and how people could use it and how it works. I've gotten way better at Canva for making graphics and things like that. I've gotten a little tiny bit better at just making videos. I've done some research for various videos to help other writers. That's bolstered some of my like writing and marketing skills. And I'm not done. I am now delving for the first time into the world of book talk for an upcoming video, and now I'm starting to learn how book talk works. So now, even if I had to jump back into the workforce, I would probably find it much easier to get work helping people with their social media platforms, their brands, their graphics. I have more credentials for running like critique or editorial services. So I might not really want to do any of those things, but if I had to pay the bills, I'm sure that I probably could. Now, I said that if you quit your job, you won't find that you have a whole lot more time to do your creating and your marketing as you may have hoped. But what you will find is that you have a lot more flexibility. Sure, you might still generally max out around the same amount of creative output in a week, but you will be able to move those hours around, or you might be able to accept like a short deadline kind of thing. Like if you are an artist and you want to go to more conventions, you're going to have more time to do that if you don't have a job. If you have like paid speaking opportunities, paid teaching opportunities, work for hire gigs that have a deadline, anything that you just want to shift your time around, or even I've talked about on the channel before, maybe it's a little TMI, but I've noticed that I write better based on my hormonal cycle. So there's a time of the month where I'm in a really good creative flow state, and I really prefer that time to be blocked off, nothing going on during that time. If I had a day job, then I would be at the mercy of my work schedule. There's all kinds of benefits to having your schedule wide open beyond just being able to get more done. And then there's just that, you know what? Life is short. Sometimes it's good to take a risk. You might fail. Things might all go downhill. All of your dreams might collapse. It is possible. You will find a way out of that situation if it happens. That was something that I did not trust as much when I was younger, that I would always find a way to get out of a failure or bad situation. So I was more scared of failing. But it's happened a few times in life that things have not been going very well, and I figured out a way to get past it. Sometimes when you're kind of up against the wall, you have a certain kind of special clarity that occurs where you have to think up, what do I do now? Sometimes great things come out of those moments. And you might not even have that happen to you at all. It might be that it all works out just as you hoped, and you're so glad you didn't stick to your crappy job one day longer than you had to, because now all of your dreams are coming true. That's also possible. So I am a big believer that there are moments in life where you should take a little bit of a risk, or even kind of a lot of a risk. It's also worth considering what your life circumstances are when you take this risk. If you have kids, you're going to be a little less inclined to take a big risk for obvious reasons. Or if you have anyone that you're caring for, versus if you're young, you have time to bounce back, and you don't have a whole lot of obligations in life yet. That really is the time when it might be a good time to take a risk. My general rule of thumb, without knowing your particular circumstances, but just as kind of a blanket rule as to when I think people should quit their day job, is I think of like this rule of twos. You should have 2 full years of income saved up. It doesn't have to be like, it can be your kind of bare minimum survival income, but it should be 2 realistic years of baseline survival income. You're making twice what you make in your job, and you have done so for 2 years. If you want to be like safe, like you have a real job, you want to be careful about quitting it, and you have kids or a lot of debt, any kind of particular weight to your life that you don't want to take a huge risk, then I would go with that rule. 2 years of savings, 2 years of income at twice what you're making in your job. That's when I would quit, because that will give you time to pivot if things go wrong, like a good cushion of time. So I hope this was helpful. If you did find this useful information, make sure to give me a like. And if you want to stick around, I talk about all aspects of the creative life in general, including the emotional, financial, practical, and writing in particular. And make sure to check out Magic Mind with the link in my description. If you'd like more from me, I have YouTube memberships and a Substack and Patreon. All of those get 2 bonus videos a month voted on by you guys. And my Patreons also get access to my Discord, which has been such a lovely little slice of the internet, let me just say. It has just the right amount of activity and cool people in there, but I would still love to have a few more. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye!